All right. I would be interested in coming to the non-fungible token workshop.
Oh, I've never seen it.
And NFTs. Yeah, because those are a factor.
What is an NFT?
Non-fungible token. It is a way of selling your art online for, well, you'll have to come next month.
Yeah.
We'll sit together.
I'm sorry. I don't know the question.
Non-fungible token.
Okay, I'll look into it.
Yeah.
And I
it is-
will send you information of the session.
Yes.
You can talk more
Yeah.
about it next month.
Yeah. Yes, it's quite a puzzling phenomenon, whether there is a real value to be had from engaging in trading online for NFTs. Smoke and mirrors, maybe?
Cryptocurrency, it's like,
Yeah,
it's a topic.
yes. Bitcoin, it's the whole cyber currency thing. Yeah.
Don't get it.
Yeah, well, let's come next month. Right there. Because I need to know who is able to talk about these things because they're important for artists to know. So here we are. This is me. I am Anne Frost, and I've got some an agenda. Oh no, I don't. This is what I need to wind back to the beginning. That's better. This is a presentation platform called Prezi. It's just different from PowerPoint because I'm kind of tired of PowerPoint. So this is a different way of doing it. So this is what I think we're going to be doing. I'll introduce myself a little bit, tell you where I've worked and what I know, and stuff you can ask me that I can perhaps be helpful with. I want to find out from each of you what your primary idea about what value you want out of today, this evening might be. Who are you, broadly speaking? Then I'll go to that slide that we saw, which was your wish list, which is things that we asked you to let us know in advance what could be helpful. And I go through that then in some detail about some responses to the things people wanted to know. And then to wrap up, we've got the opportunity to engage in, I don't know, arm wrestling, arguing, discussion, questions and answers, heckling maybe, you know, might happen. And then my contact info is here, and you can publish the slide, the Prezi thing as well, even though it's included in the recording. It can also be a standalone, and I am available not in my Humber capacity with that hat on, but in my individual arts manager capacity for Brain Pickings. Have a consultation with anybody who wants to run some ideas by me, and I usually work for coffee or soup. If you have in mind, or tea, something like that. Let's just meet for tea or coffee. And I actually live within walking distance here. I'm overlooking the Kipling subway stations in one of those buildings there. So I was able to walk here. I should walk home. So if you're in the neighborhood or, you know, in this vicinity, and we're locals, we can all do it together. And if you have a specific follow-up question or a whole new question, I'm pretty typically available. And as my learners and grads know, I respond to them as well. You know, I'm having a bit of a crisis. Can you talk to me? And so we talk about career plans. So I'm happy to do that. So that's my agenda, fairly elementary. And then we go on to a bit about me. So you'll find me online under T. Anne Frost, because Frost, I mean, there are other Anne Frosts. There's another one that has the same, or a Gmail address, and she lives in London in the UK. And very kindly, she forwards things to me when things go to her by mistake. But I'm T. Anne Frost, and I'm at Humber as a day job lately for the last few years, and probably till I retire. So I have worked, as I note, in every art form except film, and I say so far because I might not be done. I might, you never know. I might, you know, something might crop up. Like a film festival might want some help with strategic planning or fundraising, and I might go, sure, I'll work in film. So I've worked at the John Thompson Gallery in Owen Sound, writing funding proposals for them. I've worked for the Bruce County Museum up there, out of the city of Toronto, obviously. And I've worked in theatre and music and dance, with the transferable skill set in the third bullet point, because I can write proposals and find money. That makes me quite popular. So
yeah,
yeah,
it's a skill.
People
hate you.
Yeah, that's why there's lots of paid work for people who love doing it. Because if you can manage to love some of it or all of it and make it your sort of your deep well of knowledge, there are lots of postings. If you look on anywhere like workinculture.ca, which is a place where you'll find a lot of job postings, about 50% of the jobs there have some element of what is euphemistically called development, which might sound like it's developing artistic product, but it typically means raising. So that's what I've been doing. And sometimes people ask me, how much money have you raised over your whole working life? I don't really know. I haven't kept a scorecard. But the biggest single piece I got was $250,000 for the city of Owen Sound, which oddly was in 2004, a cultural capital of Canada.
Really?
Imagine that, 21,000 people. And it was a project, a program of the federal government, of the Department of Canadian Heritage, where it put funding into different municipalities different years over a series of years so that they could have a lot of artistic activity. And like most things that you see happening, it's modeled on something that happened in the UK or Australia or where they sort of. So that was the last, but since then I've been teaching as well, so I haven't written any really big funding proposals, but mostly I'm known for writing proposals that get artists and arts managers paid and get projects, financed and stuff. So I've got obviously content about that here. Hello. So now I run the program, the postgraduate arts management program at Humber as a day job, and that's a 1-year graduate certificate. It's not an undergrad, 3 or 4 years long. It's just 1 year. Fairly intense work. And people who come through that program learn HR and cultural policy and financial management and cash flows, and budgets, and revenue development, and what else? Planning, equity, pluralism, diversity, all of those things, so that they come out at the end ready to insert themselves somewhere and improve and change and make the arts, the cultural sector better in some way by putting a lever in them and giving it a shove. And as I say, I've got many grads who are working here at Arts Etobicoke, and I have had grads working at the other local arts service organization down on the lakeshore. Currently, I don't believe I have any grads there, but mostly I do. There's hundreds of grads from my program. So there are people out there who can help you. If you don't like all of this funding stuff, there are people who like it more than you maybe, and who can help with writing proposals. I've written funding proposals for artists, and I've been paid in pottery and chickens. Because that's what was available.
Oh, chicken in it.
Yeah, the chicken, never mind. Yeah, the chicken didn't fit in the pot. It was huge, but it was generally good. So I want to find out who I've got, generally speaking. I thought the capacity is about 20, and we had about 12 registered, of whom we had most here, so that's good. So some of you I know before, I've met before, and some of you who are Humber grads who will have heard a lot of this before, but I just want to know what your goal is, particularly through attending beyond what you told us online as you registered. How shall I call you? What is your artistic discipline? What's your medium? Are you a newcomer to the area or to Canada or not? Are you looking to promote your own work, or are you an employee promoting the work of others? What do people want and need? So I'll start at the back, because why not? So how can I help? And who are you? How can you help? Because you probably know stuff that we don't know.
Perhaps. I don't know. My name's Rosemary. I formerly actually worked as an arts store manager and worked in the manufacturing distributing side of art supplies. And then I worked at the provincial government in the Premier's office, and I actually worked at the AGO for 7 years. When I was at the AGO, I was a lot of business ops and director's office stuff, so working with development and operations. And I left there because my family life was just getting too crazy, and the track team home and all of that wasn't working anymore. And I've been home with my kids for almost 10 years now. With the bold promise that I was going to kickstart my ceramics business, water. and I built a studio in my basement, but that's where it's got as far as.
Mhm.
So I just need I need to just think about, how can I do it as a self-employed thing? Is this something that's realistic for me? Should I maybe just look for something that supplements that?
Mhm.
What that might look like, and what kind of opportunities or where I could look for that kind of thing. So it's kind of
Mhm.
I'm trying to finally just say, okay, now I can start maybe finding time in my day
Mhm.
to really get into this stuff.
Mhm.
And so I just
See what-
understand.
what it entails, yeah. So you've had a decent amount of experience on the kind of management and things side.
Yeah.
For a huge institution.
Yes.
And you're
Yeah.
not one of those anymore.
Pardon?
You're not one of those anymore.
I'm not, and I think what I realized is, and I do have an art degree.
Yeah.
And I felt like, I didn't my degree. Who gets to use their degree nowadays, right?
Yeah,
So I felt satisfaction in that, but I didn't really. I was an EA, and I did project management for the real.
Yes.
But I was kind of like I was stuck in that role.
Yep.
And I wasn't going to be able to go beyond it. I literally had many senior people say, "You're gonna have to leave
Yes.
and come back
Yes.
in order to grow out of this role because frankly,
Yes.
you're really good at it."
They want to keep you where,
Because I was doing the job.
yes,
They bore the decisions,
yes,
but I did the
yes.
7 different ways this could go. Here's all your options.
Yeah.
And they just made the final decision.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, I didn't fall in love with work.
No.
I was missing my.
I get it. Yeah. Okay. That's all in there.
Yep.
All right. And where are you now?
Sorry about my introduction, yes.
Yes.
So I'm an arts manager, I would like to say. I'm currently working at the Toronto Comic Con, so kind of shifted beats a little bit in more pop culture. I am in my previous job was working completely opposite. It was I was in corporate events for RBC. It was interesting, very exciting. But very similar to you, I feel like that was a route that I was just there was no moving ahead, and it wasn't as creative. And when it came to the arts, I think the expectation that I had was very different because I was more in sponsorship and more inclined on that front. But it was more events specific, which was fine. New experiences, I think for me, it gave me a different perspective of different ways you can actually use your skill set. But unfortunately, because I have to survive in Toronto, I had to get a job, and it's still in the event space. I just feel a little bit disconnected from the arts, which is why I was so glad when I saw Anna's email this morning. I mean, last week, and I was like, I need to get back in the city sign. So I feel like, grant management, that's something that I really want to get back into, or help out with title funding, even if it's something just for me to pick up new skill and just get back into that. Because currently it's very operational, right? You just send it. It's fun, I can do it with my eyes closed at this point, but it is something that I want to, I just feel like I don't want to be so here. That's okay. Just working in the art. So yeah, so Toronto Comic Con is interesting, very exciting, but it's very for profit making, and I've come from back on the non-profit. So it's a different shift for me as well. I can expect that to be to help you analyze and just think about different ways of working in the arts. So it is arts, so they do look after Art Toronto. I know that the company I'm part of is Informa Connect, and they do Art Toronto, they do Comic Con. So it's interesting, but it's very profit, which comes with that level of expectation and pressure. So yeah, so I feel like I'm back here just to my goal is just to stay connected and kind of be good myself. So yeah, career crisis.
Yeah. We can have this in the room here. We don't have to. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I think right now this is just the community that I need.
Sure. Okay. Super. All right. And introduce yourself.
Yes, sorry, my name is Rian.
Yes.
Rian Sunda. I was part of the Hub course, which was excellent. I also used to work at Artsecure before as a research coordinator. Such a fun opportunity. And
So we've got 2 people sort of on the roster. I'll come to you next. Your name and what can I specifically do?
Okay, oh, well, I'm Well, I've been painting a long time, acrylics, my medium. I can say that I'm a nerd Jew now.
Sure.
Because you just-
Yep.
And so I'm graduating from Sheridan College of Illustration. So I just did George Brown. So I've been working in
Mhm.
graphics and print press for many years. I lived in Oregon for 17 years. I was born in Etobicoke, so I'm that. And I take care of my work. Yes, so I was really interested in the ideas around secret plans, right, proposals, and also sort of dream for the future if I end up moving into the country,
Sure.
having a spot similar to this scale.
Yeah.
Really fun.
Oh, yeah, that's entirely possible with a longer term plan. Yeah, and your name is Julie. Okay. And I'll continue to do my little.
Hi, my name is Divya. I'm a recent grad of the Harvard program. I literally just finished. And I'm an emerging arts manager looking for,
In all of these realms and
Yeah.
where's the money coming from? How do we
Yeah.
get that?
so I have a lot of, I have some experience.
Yeah.
In development work, and I've also done like communications, media, so I'm sort of open right now, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And in 3 months, you'll be, something else will happen.
Yeah.
I'll come to you next, please.
Hi, everybody, I'm Lauren. It's very much like you, Julie. I feel like we've got a lot to share here. I'm also an emerging artist. I've been painting in acrylics and just much more recently doing a lot of photography.
Sure.
I have 5 shows this year, group shows. I'm really proud of myself for doing this. Thank my ex-husband for leaving me because he got me started in art. That was like my catalyst. I'm gonna do something now, right? And it's so exciting. And you know, I live like 2 very different lives. I'm also for about 40 years now, I've been an adult literacy specialist. So that's my day work.
Yep.
So you know, sometimes I feel like I'm kind of doing the Garrett work. You know, I'm working at night, doing all this stuff, and I'm finding now, very much like you, how do I get funding? I'm self-taught.
Yeah.
I don't have any formal training. Like I've done some arts like workshops, but you know, I feel like I've got lots of
Yeah.
things to say. I need to get funding to, first of all, I need to buy some good photo equipment. I need to be able to apply to more shows. Like I'm running out of options because I work in not-for-profit. Let me tell you, I love teaching, but the salary is right.
It
So
is,
yeah, how to get funding when you don't have like a lot of formal arts training.
Sure, we'll talk about eligibility for funding, because you don't have to be formally trained, but there have to be some other pieces, of which your shows are significant, you know, a significant piece of that, but we'll talk about that a few slides down the road.
Great.
Thanks, and hello.
I'm Patrick. I'm also a recent undergrad. I did photography on the side and whatnot. I'm currently I do a lot of project management and I saw that. A lot of stuff happens since before, so I'm just here to
Reminders. To see you. Good. Now, we've had a chat, but
Hello, yeah, hello.
Biography.
Too boring,
Yeah.
but, my name is Patricia Storms, and I think I'm sort of like you two ladies, and then like I've done, I've been a freelancer, since, my late 30s. My previous, career was library, which, as much as I love books, my heart wasn't in. And anyway, so I went back and studied graphic design, and so for a while I was working in magazines, and I actually designed ebook covers, like anything I could put my hands on. But I love to draw, and I was very fortunate that I just managed to get a lot of freelance work. This was like in the 2000s. A lot of humorous illustration. So cartoons in newspapers like the Washington Post, magazine gag cartoons. I mean, it means you got hustle, but it was never boring. So, and I'm lucky because I could do lots of different things. So I was never boring, but at the same time, there's a lot of skills that I don't have because, in terms of doing a show, like I don't get any notification of that.
Mhm.
And so when the COVID hit, as most of my career, I was just always hustling to get, you know, the cartoons into papers and yada yada. Oh, sorry. I also ended up getting into kids' books, so I write nursery kids' books as well. Forgot that bit. But you know, it's good to be versatile, so that you don't starve to death. And yeah, so when COVID hit, I discovered that I love painting in gouache and just love it. And I managed to sell some pieces, but I don't. I mean, well, I just don't know if my work is the gallery level. I don't know, but I did manage to get in the show, the Toronto Public Library. There certain branches have galleries, and so right now I'm in the Deerwood branch.
Good.
For the month of October, and I did apply for funding, didn't get it,
No, that happens.
but Nova, like that whole website, is just,
Yeah.
oh God,
Yeah, Nova is the portal for the Ontario Arts
it's
Council.
the portal of hell.
Yes, yeah, and when they first introduced it, it wasn't quite ready, so we were all in the position of having to beta test it and tell them what the problems
So how new
were.
is it?
Oh, it's several years old.
Oh,
Yeah, it's not brand new, yeah,
so yeah, what
Yeah.
just how to present myself,
yeah,
you know, and I do it, like,
Yeah.
my art is not, you know, intellectual.
it's
so-
not conceptual.
No, it's cute.
Yeah, and anybody, you know, there's this sort of hierarchy of representational art doesn't have the cachet.
I've been this my whole life, because I
Yeah.
love cartoons, and we're the lowest of the low. Right up there with poets,
Yeah,
you know? I mean, I love all that, but I
Yeah.
you know, we don't get no respect.
I get it.
Anyway, so I really need to learn about the
Okay.
marketing and.
So we'll touch on it all here in an hour. I can't give you the PhD level, but we can talk. We can talk. And it just brings to mind, I had a grad who just announced to me today, well, announced on his social media, that he has just started a new role where he's being asked to source cover art for books. And if any of us has any people whom we would like to connect him with in this new role he has, please, you know,
What do you mean in terms of source, like art?
he is being,
Artists to illustrate?
yes, yeah. So why don't you just email me and I'll introduce you to Brandon? Because he just today sent me a message, or the world a message, saying, this is my new job. This is what I need in order to do it well. You know, calling in the submissions. So just happened to be that I meet you today on the day that I know. It's just the way life is, if you pay attention. I know. And then I'll just ask the last couple of you in the room to introduce yourself briefly by name and hello. More or less artistic discipline. Hello.
Hello, my
Again.
name is Macarena. I am an arts administrative student. I am also a musician. I write songs. I'm a songwriter, and I have 2 records like in Spotify and stuff. And I also have a record that I'm doing right now. I have 3 songs, and I'm applying for funding. So I'm trying to see what else can I do with my art too. Yeah, and to know artists too, and this space that is good for me because I'm newcomer. And yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Right. And lastly, you.
My name is experience. And last year, I organized art shows
Mhm.
for our small society and community.
Mhm.
The bigger more is from the last years is folk art.
Okay.
So I'm there to sell
Mhm.
because it's like it's it looks nice. Can be very popular.
Mhm.
be somebody who can all artists always now to invite our new culture. So this is maybe very good step for me to
Mhm.
for promote and for sell.
Okay.
And ST it's very much. It's very important. Some people ask me, but I'm afraid to connect.
Mhm.
So next months, I'm here too.
Oh, the NFTs, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad that you're digging into that. That's something I can't touch on here necessarily, except to acknowledge their existence. So we have got some rich stuff going on in the room. We've got people who can inform each other as well as my being able to bring some information into the room. So this is what you had written down ahead of time, which is more or less raw what you sent me, Anna. It's I copy pasted it. This is how you provided information about the things that you wanted to take away. And so, of course, I did a bit of a look at that and I boiled it down like you do maple syrup into, there were 5 mentions of funding and 5 of marketing and 4 on pricing, and then invoice templates and systems, grant management, tips and tricks for applying, social media, way you should be selling your work. These are all things that were on the list that you wanted to dig into. So I'll get into the meat of the thing now after the introductions. I'll talk more than this slide indicates, okay? Because I've got lots. This just is to prompt me to be able to talk at more length about a lot of these. So primarily in Canada, one of the sources of funding which you're aware of, Tricia, because you've fought with NOVA, which is the online application system for the Ontario Arts Council, is the Arts Councils. And there are 3 of them that are available to us here where we are now. There's the Toronto Arts Council, the Ontario Arts Council, and the federal version is called the Canada Council for the Arts. Just has a slightly different syntax to its name. So there are 3 arts councils, and they are characterized, the kind of organizations they are that they operate at what's called arm's length from the government that gives them the money to spend, which means that the government of Canada and Ontario and Toronto, all of those politicians and civil servants, they know that they can't make decisions about it. That's not what they do best. They know that those kinds of decisions should be made by the peers of the people. So they designate every year an allocation from the central treasury at Canada, Ontario, to whichever arts council operates at that level, municipally, provincially, federally. And in keeping with the mandate of the Arts Council, which is essentially to support and promote the creation, production, dissemination of art, they allow the Arts Council to make decisions about how to put the money in the hands of artists. And politicians are not supposed to weigh in on that. They're not supposed to be involved in check presentations or, letters of support, because the whole process, as I have described it here, that's what the arm's length principle is. It means that those decisions occur out of the central hub of government. They're not policy-driven decisions about what the subject matter of the art has to be, or does it have to serve a social agenda? No, the Arts Council makes those decisions through a process called peer assessment. So any one of you might want to opt in to being on the jury for an Arts Council if you have a history of exhibiting your work, or if you have some formal training, or if your peers recognize you as an artist, if you're in room shows and so on. So the Arts Councils are always typically looking for individuals to assist them by assessing applications. And the best way to learn that how to write a funding proposal is to mature, because you see everything. You see people who do it really well and you go, oh yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And you see people who fail so badly to tell the same story in their narrative with their words and their budget if they're providing them. Because when you're writing a funding proposal, not necessarily for individual artists, because you don't have to provide a budget, necessarily justifying how you as an individual would use this money to carry forward your work that's going to be part of an exhibit, perhaps. But in other circumstances, if you're part of a collective of artists, or if you're participating in a gallery show, and you're providing information to go from that gallery as an entity to seek funding to pay you and other artists, then there will be the budget element, and the budget has to tell the same story as the narrative. If you're going to have an exhibit lasting 6 weeks, then you have to have a corresponding amount of money in the budget to pay people for those 6 weeks to steward your exhibit. It all has to kind of fit together and tell the same story, one in words and one in numbers. So I am able to explain again sort of the process, the decision-making process, because I'm showering you with new information here. Unless maybe one of you has been involved with an arts council as a juror or had a conversation with anybody. You have. Which arts council have you spoken with? Toronto. It's local. They're right here. The Ontario Arts Council is also right here, but their purview is the province. So the Toronto Arts Council really are the closest and the easiest to be friends with, because their business is just the city of Toronto. And the folk who are the various officers representing the different disciplines of the arts councils, they are totally open. They are not some faceless bureaucrats behind the desk. They actually would love to hear from you, as long as it's not on a deadline day when they're kind of busy. But they love to hear from people in advance about, I'm looking at this grant that I see on your website. I think I'm eligible, but I'm not sure. Can we talk about it? There's nothing they'd like better to hear from artists, to figure that out, because then they're not getting applications that they know you've sweated bullets over that they cannot fund. Then that makes them cry, makes them sad, because they hate to think of people wasting their time out there. Because the people who are those officers, representing, in this case, visual art maybe, or in other cases, theater or music or dance, a lot of them have been artists, practicing artists, a lot of them have been arts managers, and they are our people, they're from our side of the fence, but they've gone into the funding body in order to be able to do their very best to share the available resources with the artists who are applying. So we make each other's lives easier and better if we ask them questions, if we do our homework. There's a rather large stinging beast there. Rolled up newspaper required. Large. Yeah. Been wanting to land on somebody, especially if you have a phobia. I just had visitors for 3 weeks, and one of them was absolutely phobic about bugs. So we spent a lot of time looking after bugs and getting rid of them. But yeah, so back to my arts. Yeah, I'll just keep half an eye on it.
I'll guide them.
Yeah. As long as nobody has a deathly fear of them, I think we can coexist.
So you're talking about the Arts Council.
Oh,
We
you've
have
got-
information here with contacts.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yes.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, yes, lovely to have something in your hand, isn't it, to remind you, oh yeah, I've got to do this. But I would always suggest that whatever is on their website is more reliable than what they printed a year ago.
Yeah.
Because, if they change their mind about a deadline, or if an officer retires and they have to hire somebody else, you'll get a different name, contact name, or you'll get a different deadline, or, something may have changed. Not a lot will change, because they're pretty consistent year over year. And those are lovely. I haven't got any of those yet this year for the students in the program, but just to have a takeaway is nice. And it will allow you to see what the options are. Oh, there's an individual artist. That could be something I can apply for. And it totally could be. There's no reason why, if you look through the criteria, see if you're eligible, and then have maybe if you're uncertain about the language or the terminology, what they mean by whatever, give a call, contact with the officer and identify yourself and say, I looked at your material that's published. I have this remaining question. Can you help me out? And then the person who is behind that desk really would probably prefer to be out in the gallery somewhere anyway. So they would love to hear from you and be in touch with the people who are making the work. And it's not cheating or contraindicated or somehow, you know, criminal to apply at the Toronto Arts Council and at the Ontario Arts Council and at the Canada Council. Because the funding in each case comes from 3 different pockets. It's not like you're applying for 3 different ways to get the same money. It's 3 different purses that are in. So the best thing to do is to look and see, certainly start with Toronto. I would always, you know, start with most local and see if you can find something there. There are individual artist grants and they're in different layers. There's an emerging, mid-career and senior or advanced or something. So there's 3 different categories and you can apply for different amounts of money according to which category you sort of self-identify as. And you can certainly be an emerging artist when you're in your 50s or whatever, you know.
Or later.
Or later. Yeah. And you don't have to be a young person. That's why they use the word emerging, because it doesn't mean, you know, young necessarily. It just means that now this is the time when you're getting into this part of your life, this is your practice. So I would suggest that arts councils are a decent place to start your research, and you've already done that. And if any of you feels that that's something you want to dig into, have a look and see how they describe what they do. The caveat, as always, this is not easy stuff to do. You don't just write a proposal and you get a check. Sometimes you have to reapply a couple of times because you're not competitive with the other people in the room or at the jury sitting. It's always a really good idea at that point to phone. Who loves the phone? I do. It's appropriate for some things. Some people hate it. But it's always useful to maybe email and say, could we have a quick chat about why my application wasn't successful? And then the jury will have made comments, which the officer can then convey to you, because perhaps they didn't understand, you know, the context of something that you asserted, not knowing that it wasn't common knowledge, you know, that this is the way it works. So they might just need more elaboration or an editing job and reapply.
Yeah, could I ask that question?
You sure can. Yeah. And in most cases, you'll get oh, sure, let me just pull up my notes from
I
the
mean,
jury.
it's better to know.
Oh, because then you can tweak and do it again if you didn't get it
Well, they
right.
don't say you suck.
Yeah, professionally, it's probably contraindicated. Yeah, no, they aren't city employees, or, you know, in the case of the Arts Council at the province or the feds, they aren't government employees. They're employees of the Arts Council itself. So they have certainly a professional standard to maintain, because many of them are people whose names you will have seen and heard in discussions about what's going on in any given part of our cultural sector. So yeah, I would suggest it's always a good idea. And if they didn't keep notes, or if they are unable to divulge, asking is no crime. In most cases, they'll be happy to share, because their idea is to make it as easy as possible for you to be able to present a successful proposal to them that they can then share with the jury and have the pleasure of sending you money. They like to do that. They're not mean about it. They love to do those jobs.
Question about public presentation and the definition.
Yeah, again, I would suggest if you have any experience of public presentation, you've been in a group show, or you've been in a crowd sale, or, you know,
So
anything.
craft sale applies.
I would ask the opposite, because that's a good way to get to know them a little bit and to have them understand that you know how to ask good questions.
Fair.
Yeah. And then they can, sometimes if you ask that question, they'll tell you more that you didn't even think to ask. And you don't know what you don't know, right?
Or you can get ideas of what you can do to make your application stronger.
That's the deal, yeah. And so any of them, as long as I say, if you're calling them on the day that multiple applications are due, you will not be their favorite person. So if you look at the deadline day, I would keep clear of them for a week around it. But before and after that, they would like to hear from you. Typically, that's what I hear from the officers all the time. Oh, we wish people would do that to us more often, rather than just try and guess and then send us a proposal that is weak in some regard that we could help them with. Oh, why didn't you ask? You know, so they're approachable people. They want us to succeed. They want to be able to spend the money that they're entrusted with well, coherently. They want to feel good about the job that they do for the sector. So I would suggest have a look at what's available at those 3 levels, but start probably with the Toronto Arts Council, And you were applying through Nova to the Ontario Arts Council, to
Yes,
an individual. artist
yes,
grant.
yeah. And I forget the person's name, very helpful though,
Yeah,
directing me where the emerging, like, I didn't know any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And there was another grant I could have applied for, but it seemed to be like it was up a little bit higher than, like, I just felt I was being on the
Yeah.
At least, you know.
Yeah.
And I have received grants in the writing world, but I
Yes.
haven't applied. Because quite frankly, it just, my mind just melts when the minute I look
Yeah.
at all of that text.
yeah,
I'm sure I could have received more monies over the years, like in the kidlit book world, but it's
Mhm.
that aversion. It's like doing times.
it is kind of, because even though at the funder, they think they have really good reasons for asking you all those detailed questions. To the
Most
lay
of this
reader,
brains don't work that.
they all look kind of the same.
Yeah.
And it's not really acceptable to say, I told you once. You know, I just said that. Why are you asking me again? So you have to try and figure out why they want to know what they want to know, even if it does appear to you at first glance all to be variations on a theme of sort of the same question. Why do you want to do this work? Who is this work for? These are all the kind of questions they ask. Really, the grants available to individual artists are the ones that I would think you'll find have the fewest duplication and the least detail in terms of questions, because they know that it's you as individuals who are applying. You don't have somebody that you employ to write this stuff for you necessarily. You just have to plow through it yourself. And as far as eligibility for these are concerned, you don't have to have formal training per se, but there's a sort of a bundle of things that allow you to define yourself as a professional artist. You don't even have to make the bulk of your living from the production of art in order to be a professional artist, because so many people have a side hustle. You know, they have to have something that they know is going to pay the ongoing expenses. The deal is that if they had the capacity, if they had a viable product or, you know, an artistic practice that allowed them to attract funding from arts councils or, you know, purchasers or whatever, earning money through selling the work, that they would devote more of their time to their artistic practice. So it's not that you have to devote all of your time to being a professional artist and having a side hustle disqualifies you. That's not the case. Because really, we all know that it's a difficult go. There are very few people whose primary money earning capacity is as a professional artist. The school trustee for the Toronto District School Board down by the Lakeshore is Patrick Nunziata, and he is a practicing artist. He is part of the Nunziata family.
Really?
So, yeah.
I didn't know there were any artists in that family.
Oh yeah, Patrick. Yeah, and he's coming up through the ranks as a school trustee, which is compensated. He gets paid for that, and he sells his work to developers and people who are seeking to put work into institutional settings, into condos, into shopping malls, into office buildings and that kind of thing. So again, he is a practicing visual artist. He is a professional. He also is a school trustee, which means that he has the capacity to work politically and he gets revenue stream from that. Not huge. I think it's like 30,000 a year or something. You know, it's just an example. You don't have to be a practicing sort of money earning artist in order to be eligible for this stuff. But there is a list of eligibility criteria as you look through the materials for the grants. And if you can assert that, you know, you've had several shows or your work is sold or, you know, whatever you've been in craft shows or. Yeah.
They said something in the grants about that, and one of the criteria was that you have worked in the arts. But it was, I can't think what it is, somehow there's, or a curator or someone in arts, and maybe it had to be worked for someone that was accredited.
Huh. I haven't seen that, but I would be.
So I was like,
No, I'd be prepared. That's another question.
art, but I don't know if City of Toronto's accredited for them.
I would assert that it is, because there are professional arts managers working for the City of Toronto, curators, lots of them actually. They have a corporate art collection and they have an outdoor art collection and sculptures and the whole full wax, right?
So yeah, so I just wondered.
Yeah.
Who chose me and people that applied for that job?
Well, again, I would ask that question of the officer, the funding officer, because everything you ask that is a, a solid question like that, or like your question, what qualifies as a public presentation, all of that identifies you as somebody who was curious and interested to figure out how to do this stuff. And then that first, the officer will remember, oh yeah, I spoke with them. I can help them out. And if they hear of something that you might want to hear of, like I'm going to send you the information about my grad who's looking for book covers. Those kind of conversations build on one another. And if they remember you fondly as somebody who asks the good questions and thanks them for the answers and carries on to do something, then, you've got an ongoing personal relationship with them. So it's pretty good. So I would suggest, however, that because the individual artist grants are really the sort of the grants of first resort, they're the ones that most artists would aim to, because they wouldn't be involved, say, in a gallery particularly, and want to be involved at that level, applying as an institution. But they get a lot of applications and they cannot fund it. So you will find perhaps that you are declined the first time, and you might have to pout and stomp, and then call the officer and say, can I figure out, would you please, when my application was not competitive, and then throw yourself back into the ring again. And you can't, I know it's hard, but you can't. I know.
And my whole life, like in this career, it's such a double-edged sword. I don't know if that's the right analogy.
Yeah.
Because in order to create great art, it has to be.
It does.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
And then.
Yeah, but yet again, and having somebody go, no, I don't think so. That does feel personal. Because, it's like they've criticized your life choices or your child or your dog or something, and you just try and figure out that it is a competitive environment. And as I say, if you have the capacity at some point in the next few years, please opt into being on a jury. You can self-nominate.
How do you do that?
You get on their website and there's a nomination form for jury members. Because they're always looking for a new jury, because it's a significant piece of work being on a jury. And you're not compensated like a consultant for thousands of dollars, but you do have your expenses paid, and you do have to commit to looking at X amount of work and scoring it against a rubric and discussing it with the rest of the jury and coming up with, where the cutoff is, that we can fund these, but we can't fund these. And then, you become part of the inside track of how to make those decisions, and you understand better how to compete for that money yourself.
So again, would you necessarily have to have like a formal arts training for that, or if you've been in shows, like I've been in, done 11 shows now. So I mean, would that be sufficient, to present myself?
Yeah, it depends, because the arts councils are always keen on including new people in juries. They want representation from all the age groups, all the ethnicities, all of the locations. In Toronto, they want representation from outside the downtown core, because art is still perceived by some to be only a downtown thing. So they're looking for people of, again, all gender persuasions, all of the different spectra of differences that we have in the city. They're looking for people who can speak with and for a lot of those things. So again, if you're competing to be on a jury with a bunch of well-known artists, you might be declining, but you just, again, that's not a you problem, it's a them problem. Yeah.
I just wanted to comment. I had an interesting experience this summer talking about like not getting discouraged. I applied to a Toronto gallery to get into a show, and I was declined. And then I saw that the next month they had another show that looked really interesting.
Yeah.
I applied, and the curator, wrote back and she said, I'd like to have you in the show. And when I went to deliver my art, she said, you know what I liked? You didn't give up.
Yeah.
She said, she said that she actually got some really nasty notes from some artists saying, well, you should have accepted me. Like, so she said, so much of it is about like the business of art, being professional, trying again.
Yeah.
Maintaining
that level of interaction where these relationships.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So that was a really great learning experience.
Yeah, persistence is huge. Yeah. But again, it's easy for me to say you might have to apply 2 or 3 times to get funding. What do you do in the meantime? How do you pay for things in the meantime? I can't answer that question. But oftentimes when you're looking for funding, you have to have some evidence of previous practice. So you have to be self-propelled for a certain amount of time. Otherwise, they would have anybody who woke up in the morning and said, I'm going to be a visual artist now. And they would, receive proposals from somebody who really had done none of the grunt work or had no idea of the media or whatever. So there is an element of demonstrate that you've done some of this before so that we know that you're serious and we can put money in your hands to do something. So what have I gone through? Funding for individuals of any discipline is extremely competitive, may need to be patient and reapply several times if possible. As I say, it's easy for me to say. And I know it's difficult to go at something a second or third time if you're unsuccessful the first time. So the arts councils at the government level are the ones that you need to be having that relationship with. You will not typically find that government funding per se is available directly from the City of Toronto or from the province of Ontario or from the government of Canada, because what they need to do with their funds that are not spent at arm's length, but rather are spent to enact government policy is that you have to be performing some social good thing. For the province, for instance, if you're a tourism organization and you're attracting tourists to an area, so they'll spend money and inflate the local economy, spending money on parking and restaurants and souvenirs and stuff. The governments will fund organizations who aim to do those things, which helps carry forward government policy for whichever level of government you're pitching at. But the arts councils, again, with the mandate for the creation, production, dissemination of art, there are people who exist to fund the work we do, not because it serves a social purpose, not because it helps tourism or has some other economic benefit or factor involved, but just because we're sort of the R&D section of society. We're the ones that try things and make them happen, and we might fail sometimes, but the kind of work that arts councils fund isn't typically, it's not bound up in economic development or tourism or any of those things that you see governments aiming to do. So you won't necessarily find direct government funding available to put in the hands of individuals, but rather organizations can apply to do things that help the government do its thing. And then I carry on to talk about crowdfunding. Has anybody considered or looked at Patreon or any of the other crowdfunding sites to fund activities?
I guess I looked at Patreon and I just couldn't quite understand how it works.
Yeah. I know that lots of several musicians, many artists use Patreon. Is any of you using it or considering it?
Many of my friends.
Yeah.
Is it successful?
Yeah, I mean, if you're really famous or if you have a community, I mean, if you have a community, it's not like famous, but if you have people that it's subscribing.
Right.
Yeah.
Fan base.
Yeah, and with Patreon, you have to do something like an incentive. You have to actually create something for your Patreon supporters every month because they're committing money to you as a monthly thing. They're just paying it in on the understanding that you're creating work, which is good for, they want to support their career, but you also might want to offer them something like that in recognition of it. And then you have to maintain contact with them. None of this stuff is, simple or easily done. You have to maintain that social media connection with those folk who are committed to following you in your career. So, it works in some circumstances, right? You work with several musicians. Is it Fall Off the Earth? Is that the band from Milton? Work Off the Earth.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well,
Work Off the Earth. Massive Patreon.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, but they're huge.
Yeah, but how did they get huge?
I didn't know.
Yeah.
They've been trudging in the trenches for many years.
Yeah. And now they're doing pretty well, as far as I can tell. And they're not the only ones. Amanda Palmer is a huge Patreon presence. Is she? She's a musician, Dresden Dolls, and she's married to Neil Gaiman. So they're a big power couple. Yeah. Yeah. So there are lots of people out there who rely on social media. And if you don't have an ongoing kind of presence on Patreon, if you're going for a particular project, you could do one of the crowdfunding sites that's GoFundMe or Indiegogo or any of you got experience with any of those? Yeah?
Yeah,
Which one have you used?
I use IDEAME, but it's a Chilean platform, crowdfunding.
Yeah,
And we did a marketing campaign to fund our first album.
Yep.
But it doesn't work. I mean, it didn't work at that time because the page broke.
oh,
And we kind of, the people that were trying to put the money
yeah,
there, it wasn't possible. So,
oh.
yeah, it was a
Oh.
failure, but
Oh, that's cute.
but we have a grant from the government.
Yeah, yeah. I did a Facebook fundraising campaign for bursaries for students in my program, and Facebook lost me money. So, you know, I had to go in after it. And I did get it back in the end. I had to, they just, you know, they lost the whole campaign. I could not see it on my history at all. So I had to go in after it and haul it out. I had to, you know, go through the mechanism instead, which, you know, put me off the idea of letting social media platform gather my money. But the more effective and efficient ones like GoFundMe, Fund What You Can, there are others. And we've used them for capstone projects in the program I run at Humber, because we have some internal funding, we have some student union funding, but often students want to engage their broader communities and have them contribute to culminating projects that we do in our program. So they put out a crowdfunding platform. The trick is for the students, and I've been working on this, the proceeds of a crowdfunding platform are taxable income.
What?
Yeah.
Oh.
So if you don't declare it, CRA can come and say,
Oh, yeah.
we happen to notice that you raised $2,000 for this, and you owe us the taxes on that $2,000. So it's not free money.
Right.
It is part of your income stream. If it's successful, you benefit from the money, but you have to set aside the amount of tax, unless you can offset. I've got a colleague in our business who has had a huge pitch battle with CRA for several years now, because they refused to allow this person to write off deductions against money that came in as part of their artistic practice. CRA doesn't think that. Anyway, so Patreon, what are we now? Shortly after 7 o'clock. I'll wrap up in about 10 minutes and then we'll start some questions. So re-granting, next bullet point. There are organizations, galleries that are empowered by funders to solicit proposals from artists to do individual or group shows. And the gallery is entrusted as a re-granter, as a recommender, kind of a flow-through with being part of the selection process. So as well as the peer assessment process of Arts Council, there's also the recommender process. And you might find that a gallery that you might be interested in showing has been empowered by the Ontario Arts Council because they've applied for that privilege to have custody of a certain amount of funds that they then re-grant into the hands of artists to put together a body of the show. So that's just another mechanism that allows funders to put money out through informed channels, through the galleries whom they trust to have a consistent curation ethic and body of work, you know, that they consistently produce work. So it's always worth seeing if the gallery that you're interested in exhibiting at is on the Ontario Arts Council's recommended list. Yeah, that's just another mechanism that's kind of opaque. So that's another way. And I think you might find, I think it's just the OAC, the Ontario Arts Council, that has that mechanism. It might be the other arts councils, but I know that it's the OAC, the Ontario Arts Council. So if you go to the OAC's website and just put in the search thing recommended, and then you might get a list. And they also do it for theater programs and other funding. They, the money that they entrusted to clients of theirs whom they know can solicit the work of individual artists and put the money in their hands to get the work done. So anyway, my final bullet point is, you know, people outside our sector think, oh, you just apply for grants. It's easy. Well, you know, what's the matter with you? People. But it isn't that easy because it's competitive and because a lot of people get that kind of deer in the headlights look when they have to respond to all of those questions.
Try to hire somebody else to do that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, well, the tax code is horrible in Canada. You know, I'm waiting for them to change it so that you don't have to self-assess. in the UK, the government sends you a bill and you pay it. You don't have to go through the whole. Yeah. I would honestly prefer that because, you know, it's like, it's horrible, isn't it? To use that. It's actually horrible. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it's not an easy thing. It's not just a mother load of money that is available for everybody, but it's worth pitching at, and it's worth developing a relationship with that funding officer. And then the next priority for people was marketing. So I'll blitz through this in terms of how a business school would teach you about marketing. And we can talk about the granular details of it as we go along. So typically when you're looking at marketing, which I have taught at the college and university levels, the business texts will tell you that you really have to pay attention to the 5 Ps as I have described them there. So we'll go through particularly, is your product well defined? Is it recognizable? Is it something that you use consistently when you are communicating with the outside world? Do you have an image of your work on your social media platforms, or do you use it on a business card, or do you have it on your resume? Do you use a certain style or color palette? Do you represent yourself consistently throughout all of your sort of external facing things? Is your work of high quality? Is it something that people will buy and enjoy or use or, you know, interact with, and it won't the colors won't migrate, or it won't in some way fail or whatever. So you've got a reputation of producing quality work. So firstly, the product. Can you stand behind the things you do? And is it always going to be at a consistent quality? Next, placement or place. Where do you make your work available for purchase? I do have an online presence. Who's got Etsy stores? Anybody selling on Etsy? Nobody.
I tried, and it just seems so competitive.
Yeah.
Actually, you can try harder.
You said that we go to Etsy to steal their ideas from us.
Yes. Yes. Who said that?
E-commerce courses.
Yes. Oh yeah, I've got lots of artists whom I know. There's an artist from Hamilton. Her name is Cheyenne Federiconi, and her business name is Sugar Bones. And she produces quirky little tins of idealized female figures like Barbies, or kind of dark messages about. Anyway, if you just look up Sugar Bones, she has been ripped off so many times, and people have produced her work, you know, on T-shirts and all sorts of things. She spends half of her life chasing people down.
Yes. What kind of things?
She,
And on top of that, now we have AI.
yeah, we do. And it will never end, by the way. You know, once we overcome whatever this is going to be, there'll be the next challenge. Yeah.
And I'm a member of the Potter's Guild.
Yeah.
And we have guest arts every month. And everyone always asks, where are you selling? And they always say, don't go near Etsy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because they say they take so much of your money.
That's what I
And
did.
the percentage is so high that for all that you're doing all the marketing anyway, they're
Yeah.
just posting it.
Yeah.
So I've just heard it so many times over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
That, you know, just get yourself a website and throw it up there. Like, it's so much, you'll get 100% of it. Yeah, you still have to package it. You still have to ship it. You still have to do all those bits and pieces.
Yeah.
It's so, it's really just that marketing tool, like that people will go there and find your name. So if you can find another avenue, like something like a guild that put your information out there, or an Insta account or whatever it is, but there's other ways of getting the attention, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's fair. I'm not advocating it.
Yeah, no, I understand you're asking.
Yeah, I'm saying, are we online? Are we selling online? Do we have a presence online? Yeah. Yeah.
Sachi. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I've got a grad who worked at the White Cube Gallery in London, so you know there's that element too.
It's
Yeah, I know.
our guest, or our
Yeah.
guest.
Yeah, he was making his presence felt. Yeah, so where is your work available for purchase? Do you sell through galleries? where your work is available is a consideration and how visible you are. And I'll get onto some more content on that on the next slide, as we will with pricing actually as well, because that was a question, right? I think 4 people were saying, how do I price my work? So promotion, as I say, including social media, also word of mouth. And I was saying to Patricia before we both arrived, that here I am telling people who are happiest alone in the studio that you have to pump your networks. You have to represent your work positively, consistently, professionally, in an outgoing way, and be shameless, you know, and say, this is the work I do. It's wonderful, you know. I wish you would come and enjoy this opening, this exhibit, or this product sale, or whatever. You are your best advocate, and the people around you who love you are also your best advocates. So word of mouth. Do you keep an email list of purchasers? You do? Do you communicate with them at all?
No, it's looking for-
There you go. Good stuff.
Newsletter?
Newsletter, if you've got something to say or to share, yeah. But yeah, if you sell into people or institutions or whatever, just remind them you exist from time to time, you know, drop something into their inbox. Best thing is to find something that you think they might be interested to know, that you have gleaned from, you know, your other networks, and say, oh, I thought you might want to see this. And then they'll remember you as somebody who's helpful in providing, you know, context and stuff. And maintain that relationship with people whom you have sent, whom you've sold work to, because finding a new customer is always way harder than bringing them on, or getting somebody who's already made that commitment once or more to recommit to buying something, to buying your work, or to, you know, having you to their house where you're going to have to work on in their dining room, the living room, and they're going to invite their friends, and they're going to have a, you know, soiree, or have you speak about your art or something like that. So again, as I say, I know that my potters, my visual artists, my poets, my sculptors, not really happy with that. But that's one thing that helps in order to keep yourself out there.
Quick question about frequency.
Yeah,
Once a month.
probably. I would say not more frequently than that, because we all
Not every
know.
6 months if they forgot.
That's
So
right.
we're looking at somewhere in that 1 to 3 kind of
Yeah.
like
It's
little
even-
nudge.
Yeah, I'm still here. This great thing I just did. Yeah, and yeah, you have to represent yourself. So yeah, finally, again, engaging and mobilizing networks, and getting the people who already love you to think well of you and include you and invite you and include you in their professional networks as well. And I've got some other ideas about that. After we talk about pricing, I've got one more slide. So that is the definition that the CRA says about fair market value. Just FYI. So that's what you're looking to achieve. You're looking to figure out how to price your work so that it is the highest dollar value you can get when you're interacting with your patrons. And my colleague Heather Young, who invites you to email her as well if you're interested in talking more about pricing and the financial management side of the arts. There are 3 approaches, generally speaking, and you can do a blend of these 3 approaches. And the first is to calculate what it costs you to produce the work. So your materials, your studio expenses, your own labor at a reasonable rate. And then once you sort of capture all of the costs that go into a work in the supplies and materials and your time and the keeping the lights on and the internet running around you while you're doing that, come up with a dollar figure, and then I would suggest you probably at least double it. Because that's what any kind of wholesale to retail or supplier to wholesale is a doubling, and then again to retail it's a price, so that everybody can have their layer from that. So you can take that cost approach and just figure out what's it cost me to produce this work in terms of the time it took me. I'm a quilter. If I tried to sell my quilts for what my time would cost, nobody is wanting to pay a four-figure amount for a bed quilt, you know, and it does take hours of sewing to create a piece quilt. The other is market approach, and these don't have to be mutually exclusive. You can look out in the marketplace, on Etsy and other places that people publish what they're charging for their work, and just get a range, get half a dozen prices that people are charging, and obviously you hope they have a viable business because they're presenting themselves as being in the marketplace consistently, and figure out if you can sell your work within that range, because that's what the work they have done amplifies or supports your decision about what to charge. And then lastly, and again, as I say, these can overlap. If you can charge more to folk who can pay more, that's a good idea, because you sometimes want to provide work at a low cost, so as not to make that be the barrier for people. But on the other hand, if you're being commissioned to do work for a project where you know they have a budget line, do not cheap out. Charge them more. They can afford more. Yeah.
It's like school visits for authors.
Yeah.
You don't charge an incredible amount to a school you know is struggling.
No.
You come and you give a book to them.
Yes.
But then when you get called to the private school,
yes, you just add a 0 or 2.
Yeah.
And don't be ashamed of that, because it's a value to them. It's a value approach, which is to say, what is the value to the person who is your purchaser? And if they are prepared to pay more money to acquire the value that your work represents, why would we prevent them from doing that? So again, you might establish a baseline of a certain amount of money that compensates you adequately for your time and materials. And then you might have a top end that you would aim to charge somebody, as you say, from a wealthy purchaser of some kind. And you would want to establish a few price points in between those two. When you're buying something, when you're shopping for anything, we typically look at the range of available prices. And I don't know about you, but pretty typically I'll buy the second cheapest thing. I won't go for the very cheapest thing, I'll go for the next one. So I'm not unusual. A lot of people do that. They go for somewhere in the middle. Yeah, right. So you want to have something priced at the very low end that probably nobody will buy, or few people will buy, and something priced above that probably more people will buy. So you're just playing with people's habits there. And lastly, I've just got one slide for remainders, and then I'm gonna. I know you have to go home eventually, soon. So and that bug has to go home. So yeah, invoice systems. Somebody wrote that they wanted to know about how that works. Invoicing, there are bookkeeping systems that you can access. QuickBooks, MYOB, Mind Your Own Business used to be another one. But there are templates for invoices that are available online. Microsoft Word has umpteen templates for things like invoices and receipts and so on. So you can default to using a template that's available. Or if you're actually running a business where you need to do that bookkeeping, you can either do the tutorials and try and do the QuickBooks approach and document all of your transactions and then have a monthly settlement and settle it up with the bank. Or you can employ Heather to do it. She's my colleague who runs finances for a bunch of organizations and has been doing so for 25 or so years now with her company. So again, it's a skill set, managing the money. Any specific questions about invoices or invoicing systems or bookkeeping from people in the room? Because that could have been a contribution from somebody who isn't with us. Okay, I'll carry on. Grant management was another wish list item. If you're going to be approaching several different funders to help you with a project, communicate consistently with all of them. Let them know where their money fits into your overall budget, what you're doing with their money, how well you're doing. I mean, don't, as you say, not frequently enough to bother them, but as often as they require you to check in and deliver a consistent message to all the funders who have agreed to put money into your project, because they will talk to each other. They do talk to each other. And funding officers move between the Toronto Arts Council and the Ontario Arts Council. So the network of people who do this work, they inform each other's decisions. They say, you've got an application from so-and-so. I see you're on their budget. Are you funding? And they'll have those conversations informally on the phone. So the more consistent you are in your communications with all of the funders that you're approaching, and as I say, report promptly what you're doing, the better relationships you'll form with them. Somebody asked for tips and tricks. There are several of those. If you respond to the application questions specifically, instead of extrapolating at length or trying to fit in extra information, that's helpful. If you can be at the first deadline for any new funding program, that's often helpful because they have difficulty spending that money at the first deadline for any new funding program because people haven't woken up yet. So if you're friends with the funding officer and they alert you and they say, oh, you were talking about doing this project, we're going to have a new funding program that we're launching and, you know, maybe you can apply to it, then you would be way more likely to get funding at the first deadline of any new funding program. Just, as I say, tips and tricks are plenty. Social media, we have discussed the fact that it is part of marketing. And as the users of social media platforms, we are essentially the product that is sold to the advertisers. We're not the customer, you know? So when we're not paying for a service ourselves as the user of a social media platform, just as the person who's scrolling, we are not the customer to complain about the level of service because we're not paying for the service. We are, in fact, our eyeballs are being sold to the advertisers. And you might want to be an advertiser. You might want to be somebody who participates in that economy as an artist and buy some ads on one of the social media platforms that will crop up when people are scrolling, led by algorithms. And maintaining a constant presence on social media is, again, you know, as I was rolling my eyes about my friend KM in Hamilton about having to pursue all the people ripping her off and stealing her design ideas. That is part of the practice of being a professional artist. You have to maintain that social media presence and keep people refreshed about what you're doing. And then finally, the last question was where to sell. So if you're exhibiting in a gallery that is that's owned by the City of Toronto, the current cohort of arts management learners is going to be programming an exhibit at the Etobicoke Civic Centre in December running into January. And work can be sold from the walls and the city takes no commission. So that's easy to know. The city is not in the commercial gallery business, so they take no commission. So you're selling also perhaps at art fairs, seasonal art and craft events. Have you thought about realtors seeking client gifts at seasonal occasions? When they have high net worth clients who have bought and sold a lot of real estate, they often want to give them a memorable gift. And they're often buying, you know, selection boxes of, they're getting gift baskets, but why would they not want to sell them a house portrait?
That's interesting because my one friend who's such a good salesperson. So she's been in the Kidlet world and then she just got into painting. And one of her art shows, she was part of a group show. It was in a real estate office. And I kept thinking, why is it in a real estate? A lot.
Yeah, because realtors need gifts for clients. That's, yeah. That's it. Corporate recognition events, you know, if you're recognizing employees for long service or something, then a piece of original art is often an interesting option for them. And have you heard of LEED standards, the environmental standards for buildings? Yeah. There are points they can score in that process for engaging with local artists and including their work in their developments.
Yeah, sorry.
What does LEED stand for? Help me out here. Environmental something.
Excellence.
Yeah, it's a standard of construction that new developers are seeking to achieve. A new lumber building, the cultural hub, is LEED certified because it's made with mass timber instead of you know, the usual form of construction methods. So acquiring LEED status is a something that a lot of developers want to do because that allows them to promote themselves as being environmentally conscious, and it will attract condo purchasers or, you know, commercial tenants or purchasers. So relationships with artists in the local area counts against that score. So you will serve the agenda of a developer by interacting with them or an agent who's representing them in the local art world. One example of an agency that does that intermediary job is a company called Ninth Editions, and they broker that relationship between condo developers and commercial developers and local artists to include the work of local artists in that in the thinking of the development. Ninth editions. Ninth editions. It's just one of several that was used as the broker intermediary because they know the art world and they know the development. So those are, excuse me, where's my water? And I'm at the end of my happy time with you because we're wrapping up any second now. But that's about the extent of it. And if you want to follow up with me, get me at my Gmail because I'm not wearing my Humber hat tonight. But if you're interested in our Humber program that I lead, I've got some propaganda here that you can either take or share. If there's anybody you know that would love to be your arts manager.
So your email, is that Anne Fast or is that T not a mistake?
No, T is my first initial. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah,
I got enough
so
on my plate.
so the Q&A can happen after the event or out on the street. Or if we've gotten anything for the last couple of minutes, we respond. No.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
For your lovely presentation. Please, if you have any questions at all. He knows everything.
Yeah, not really, but I know people who know other things. Yeah,
That's good.
that's,
It's the next question.
Yeah. Yeah, you can nudge me with an email. And if I don't know the answer, I have folk, thankfully, in our business who can assist. If it's to do with financial management, I can refer you to my colleague Heather, who has done the research or the thinking about how the price will work. She's actually doing, I think she said she's doing a presentation on that for the Toronto Public Library in about 2 weeks.
You know where?
I think it's the downtown. She's presented downtown before.
I mean, the reference?
Yeah, the Metro Reference, the Toronto Reference Library. And she will expand on, you know, what I was able to share with you tonight as part of what we need.
So if I go on the TPL website.
You probably
will I
will
be
see,
able to find-
yeah,
What's her
prices.
name?
Heather Young.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, she said, here's my material and I'm working on it because I'm presenting it again in 2 weeks. So she probably will upgrade or update or in something like that. And you'll have a whole session on just pricing your work and not. Yeah. And the library is a great spot, isn't it? It's a great library. Yeah, it's a lovely place to go and do stuff. All right.
Thank you so much. And
Happy.
Thank you all for joining.